Good evening, everyone. So glad you guys could be here. I couldn't make it today just because my family has the stomach crud, and I don't want to share it because in this case, sharing is not caring. Believe me, it stinks. Like, literally, like poop and diarrhea smell so bad. But besides that, hey, we're finishing up this series of looking at Josiah's life of faith. I had you guys answer some of the "Are you smarter than a fifth grade?" questions because as we enter in to Josiah's last little bit of his reign, of his ministry, he reinstates the Passover. So we're going to be looking at 2 Kings 23, 21 through 25. Now, as we begin, Josiah reinstates the Passover. And in small groups, I want you to discuss and look into what is the Passover. God talks about it in Leviticus, in Deuteronomy. But basically, in a general sense, the Passover was a feast, a celebration that God had his people celebrate in order for them to be reminded of him bringing them out of Egypt. Remember, they had been slaves in Egypt. God promised to deliver them. He delivered them miraculously. And the Passover was a time where they remembered God passing over them with the angel of death and allowing them to enter freely into the promised land. Now, I had you guys do Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Because so often things in our life that we learn or experience or do, if we don't repeat them or routinely go through them, we forget them. All of those things you were supposed to have learned in the first grade. I don't remember a single one of those. Maybe the fraction one, but I wasn't 100%. So as we look at even things that we were supposed to learn in school, the very elementary things that we have, if we're not using them day in and day out, we forget them. Kind of like experiences. If you've ever had a dream that you woke up from and you're like, whoa, that was an intense dream, but then by the afternoon you're like, I don't even remember what the dream was about. We forget things if we don't repeat them or routinely think about them. Here in the case for Josiah, the people not only had forgotten about the feast of the Passover, but really they'd forgotten about God's goodness entirely. They had forgotten about God bringing them and delivering them out of Egypt. So here we see Josiah beginning to reinstate something that was so important for the people to remember, God's deliverance of them. We see the need that Josiah puts on the people to remember what God has done for us. To forget what God has done for us is to completely wander off from God. And that's a trap that we can all fall into. If we don't continually seek after God and remind ourselves what God has done for us, we will forget who God is and we will stop seeing a need to follow him. As the author of 2 Kings concludes Josiah's life, he wants to bring up three aspects that Josiah did in his reign to, one, set the people up for success, to show the people what a godly leader should be, and to also demonstrate to us believers how we should follow after God. So first, what Josiah did for the people is he set an example for them. He did everything in his power he could to get them to worship God, to get rid of all the distractions. Think about this. We always tell you to read your Bible, to pray to God, and do it daily. I know your lives are busy, but what would it take in your life? What would a perfect day be for you to say, it would be so easy for me to pray to God and read my Bible every day? What would that day look like? Maybe talk about that in your small group. But I bring that up because what Josiah did for the people is he got rid of all of these things, all of these distractions that they had, but yet we'll see next week that they still turn back to idols. Guys, it's important for you to understand that there's always going to be things in our life to distract us from God. It's the shiny light example. It's the Debbie and James. I'm going to use Ronan as an example. Ronan can be running full speed for a ball, and it's impressive, badly impressive, that he can stop on a dime as soon as he sees an electrical socket, and he can be running full blast towards the ball, stop on a dime, and turn and go right towards that electrical socket. Guys, that's what sin is like for us. We can be following after God, following after goodness and graciousness and love and mercy from God, and the littlest of sin will distract us. Josiah tried to prepare the nation to get rid of all of these things, but yet sin found its way in. Also, when we think about godly leadership, At some point in your life, in some area, you will lead. Whether that's in your job, whether that's in your family. Maybe you'll have leadership in church, whether you'll have leadership in the community. In some way, you will lead. And it's important for us to take those leadership opportunities and make sure we are godly leaders. Here's 3 things that Josiah demonstrates to us that I want to encourage you guys to invest in your life with. First, Josiah, he is motivated. He is motivated. And he's not motivated by power. He's not motivated by wealth. He's not motivated by what people think. In fact, you think very early on, a lot of people would have loved if he would have just continued how his fathers did things. People liked that. People liked all of those weird practices that we've talked about. They liked that. But rather, Josiah said, no, stop. I'm not motivated by what you think. I'm not motivated by maybe even what feels good. I'm motivated to seek after God. And guys, this is so important for you to hear, especially you seniors, you juniors. There's a huge dropout rate after you graduate, and I feel that's because motivation to coming to church can be spurred on by maybe who we see, maybe the games, maybe you have a great youth pastor. But once that's gone, your motivation goes away, and because you haven't built a foundation on being motivated by God and God alone, you fall away from church. The next thing that Josiah shows us is that he is sensitive. Not like the emotional sensitive, but he's sensitive in doing what God wants. You guys know what a doctor who got the lowest grades in his class is called? A doctor. The world tells us that good is good enough. D's get degrees. Don't cheer for that. The world tells us that we're a good person. We've done enough good things, that we're good enough. But guys, that's not what God says. That's not what God says. God says, I am holy and I ask you to be holy, perfectly set apart. Being sensitive means that there are so many sins, so many traps, not even sins. And I wanted to specify this, that there's things in our lives that are traps, things that are not necessarily bad in and of themselves, but can quickly trap us into sin. One thing I think about is music, is there's so much catchy music out. But it's so easy for us to find a catchy music, find a catchy song, start listening to it, then find more songs that are maybe by the same artist that are also catchy, but soon we realize that we're listening to songs that have curse words in them, or talking explicitly about sex, or even worshiping the devil. That's a slippery slope. That's a trap. And we have to be sensitive to it. Where, yeah, you might seem weird to not listen to Lil Nas X or whoever else. But guys, that's a trap, and we need to be sensitive to that. It's not just a song. It's planting ideas. It's planting a theology, a doctrine in your head. Be sensitive to those things, and don't just do a little bit of it. Be sensitive and fulfill it. Get rid of it. Just like Josiah did. He had to completely get rid of idols. He had to completely remove the people who were influencing others to not follow God. He couldn't just put them in a closet or just tell them not to talk. He had to completely get rid of them. Why? Because he was sensitive to it, and he knew that those were traps that if he did not get rid of, they would overtake them. He had to destroy them, or they would destroy him. So Josiah was motivated, he was sensitive, and then finally he was obedient. This is a big one. I had a professor in college tell me once that incomplete obedience is disobedience. It can be like this. It can be if I asked my kids to take down the laundry, and our laundry's on the second floor, our washing and drying machine are in our basement. If one of my kids brings down the dirty laundry hamper and leaves it by the basement door, is that being obedient to the task that I told them? No. They had not completed the task, and therefore they did not do what I asked. Guys, God has commanded us to be holy as he is holy. God has commanded us to go and make disciples, go and share our faith. If we're not doing that, we are disobeying God. If we're just only putting half an effort into it, guys, that's like not doing it at all. Josiah, we can look at the example of him reinstating the Passover, where he didn't just do it to do it and check it off the list saying, okay, I'm better than the kings before me. No, he went back to the book of the law, back to the book that we talked about a few weeks ago, and made sure that he followed the Passover exactly how the book of the law that God gave them directed. Why?
He wanted to honor God fully. He wanted to be obedient to what God said fully. Incomplete obedience is disobedience. And guys, I think that's where some of us are at right now. We're not necessarily doing something wrong, but we're not doing things right. Josiah couldn't just do something for the praise of others. He couldn't just do things a little bit. He understood the need to do things fully for a perfect God. God is not asking for part of your life, guys. He's asking for all of your life. And in small groups, I think we can continue that thought of, man, what are things that we are incomplete in doing and following God? So as we continue to wrap up the idea of Josiah's life, remember, be motivated, be sensitive, and be obedient. Be motivated by God, be sensitive to God's leading, and be obedient to what he has asked us to do. I'll have one of you guys come up and pray, and then we'll head to small groups. We will see you on Sunday.